The movie opens with relentless rain pouring over a city that seems to mourn its own sins. Every street and alley carries the weight of crime, as if the city itself has become an open-air hell. The law exists only in books; on the streets, fear and violence rule. In this darkness, Detective William Somerset works tirelessly to bring criminals to justice. Age has slowed his step, but his eyes still pierce through the layers of crime to uncover the truth. Yet, he has come to a grim conclusion: this city will never change. So, he decides to retire in just 7 days. On that same day, a new face arrives at the department: David Mills, a young and passionate detective brimming with energy and idealism. He believes he can clean the city's filth, unaware of the dark abyss he is about to step into. Mills' first day on the job immediately confronts him with a brutal case. In an old apartment, a man is discovered dead in a horrifying scene. The following morning, under the heavy rain, Somerset and Mills arrive at the apartment. As they open the upper floor door, a sharp, rotten stench hits them. In the center of the room lies an overweight man tied to a chair. On the table, a bowl of decayed pasta covers his head, while cans of sauce litter the floor. His stomach is grotesquely distended, as if he had been forced to eat until his body could no longer bear it. Mills notices a bucket underneath the table. Peering inside, he sees the man's vomit, a chilling clue to the torment he endured. The autopsy later reveals that the killer had forced the victim to eat continuously for 12 hours, even pressing a gun to his temple to ensure compliance. The man's throat became swollen, his body finally giving out, and a final kick to his stomach fatally ruptured his internal organs. Before Somerset and Mills could grasp the horror of the first murder, a second shocking killing occurs the very next day. This time, the victim is no ordinary person but the city's most notorious criminal lawyer, infamous for saving countless criminals from prison in exchange for bribes. The killer tortured him mercilessly before death. At the scene, a scale is found with exactly 1 pound of the lawyer's flesh cut off. Nearby lies a note instructing, "Cut exactly 1 pound of flesh. No less, no more. No bones, only meat." Clearly, the killer had forced the lawyer to participate in his own mutilation, ensuring he cut the pound of flesh from his body himself. The word, "greed," was scrawled in blood at the crime scene, turning the murder into a grim statement. Yet, the killer left no trace that could lead the police to him. Everything was executed with chilling precision, revealing not just cruelty but cunning intelligence. The lawyer had been tortured mercilessly in his own home, alone that day while his wife was out of town. Disturbingly, the killer arranged a pair of glasses in blood over his wife's photograph, as if pointing to some hidden message. Captain informs Somerset of another strange discovery. Inside the body of the overweight victim, there were peculiar pieces of plastic. Handing them over to Somerset, Captain leaves, allowing the detective to investigate further. Somerset returns to the apartment and meticulously examines the scene, noticing scratch marks on the floor beneath the refrigerator. When he aligns the plastic pieces with the scratches, they fit perfectly. Moving the refrigerator aside, Somerset uncovers a word scratched into the wall: gluttony, symbolizing overindulgence in food. A chilling pattern begins to emerge. In both murders, the killer left deliberate messages, signaling that the crimes were connected and methodical. Somerset shares his findings with Captain, with Mills already present. He explains that the plastic pieces from the first victim led him to the word, gluttony, suggesting the killer intended for the police to follow the trail. By forcing the victims to participate in their own torment, the murderer seems to be enacting a twisted, symbolic justice. Somerset realizes that greed and gluttony are 2 of the 7 deadly sins, and the remaining 5, pride, envy, wrath, lust, and sloth, could hint at future victims. Connecting these clues, Somerset concludes that the killer might see himself as a religious crusader, preparing to punish the remaining sins through further murders. Determined to anticipate the killer's moves, Somerset heads to the city library, poring over every book that mentions the 7 deadly sins. After hours of research, he compiles a comprehensive list and shares it with Mills the next morning. Later, while they continue investigating, Mills receives a phone call from his wife, Tracy. She invites Somerset to dinner that evening, which he graciously accepts. During the dinner, the atmosphere relaxes slightly, but inevitably, the conversation returns to the case. Somerset and Mills are drawn back into the dark puzzle of a killer whose crimes are as calculated as they are horrifying, Somerset and Mills begin discussing the clues that might lead them to the mysterious killer. Mills shows Somerset photographs taken from the crime scene. Somerset examines them carefully, but nothing in the images points directly to the murderer. Everything had been executed with meticulous precision. Then Mills presents Somerset with the photograph of the lawyer's wife, the one marked by the killer with blood to form a pair of glasses. Mills explains that he has placed her in a safe room for protection, hoping she might hold information or clues tied to the killer's intentions. The detectives head immediately to the safe room. They show the lawyer's wife the apartment photos, including the scene of her husband's murder. She studies each image closely, until one photograph catches her eye. A painting hanging on the wall, upside down. It seems ordinary, but Somerset senses it might conceal a clue. Without wasting time, Somerset and Mills return to the lawyer's apartment, focusing on the painting. After a thorough examination reveals nothing, Somerset notices faint, blurred markings on the wall behind it. A fingerprint expert uncovers a hidden message: "Help me." The prints are traced to Victor, a notorious criminal with a long history of violent crimes. Once defended by the murdered lawyer, acting immediately, police raid Victor's home, and are horrified by what they find. Victor lies tied to his bed, his body decayed and grotesque, one hand severed, with fingers used to spell, "Help me," in the lawyer's apartment. On the wall, the word, "sloth," is written in large letters, symbolizing laziness. Though presumed dead, Victor is still alive, barely, and rushed to the hospital. The discovery confirms the killer's sadistic intelligence. Each victim is tortured as part of a calculated, symbolic message tied to the 7 deadly sins. Despite the horrifying scene, the killer leaves no direct evidence, leaving Mills shaken and frustrated, while Somerset keeps a measured calm. A reporter's intrusion briefly escalates tensions, but the focus remains on Victor. Medical reports reveal he had been bound for nearly a year, his body sustained with drugs to prolong suffering, while his mind had nearly collapsed, and he had even bitten off his own tongue. The case grows darker and more nightmarish, with no clear lead to the killer. Amidst the chaos, Somerset receives a call from Tracy, Mills' wife, requesting a private meeting. Over dinner, she confides a life-changing secret: she is pregnant. Unsure about bringing a child into a violent city, she seeks Somerset's advice. He shares a personal past. Once facing the same dilemma, he chose an abortion and still wrestles with whether it was the right decision. He gently advises Tracy that the choice is hers alone, cautioning her, "If you decide to terminate, never tell Mills." Tracy, however, has made her decision. She wants to bring her child into the world, despite the uncertainties. She thanks Somerset sincerely for his guidance. As they finish, Somerset receives a page and immediately heads back to the police station. Once there, he and Mills dive back into the case, their minds sharpening on the twisted puzzle that continues to unfold. As their discussion deepened, Somerset suddenly remembered something. Without a word, he stood up and led Mills to a quiet restaurant. They waited in silence, anticipation hanging in the air. Soon, a man arrived. Somerset handed him some money, and the man quietly accepted it and left. Mills, confused, asked, "What's going on?" Somerset said nothing. Later, Somerset took Mills to an old saloon. The same man appeared again, this time carrying an envelope. He handed it to Somerset and left without a word. Once in the car, Somerset finally revealed the truth. There are certain books in this world, rare, closely monitored by the government. Even though they exist in libraries, not everyone can access them freely. I paid that man to get a list of people who had recently read books related to the 7 deadly sins. From that list, one name stood out: John Doe. According to the list, John Doe had recently studied these books, and it included the hotel where he was currently staying. Without wasting a moment, Somerset and Mills headed straight to the hotel and knocked on his door. But from a distance, they noticed a man watching them intently. It was John Doe himself. Somerset quickly signaled Mills, and in an instant, John Doe drew a gun and opened fire. They narrowly escaped the bullets as John Doe began to flee. Mills chased him through narrow alleys and stairways, the pursuit tense and relentless. At one turn, Mills found himself alone, and John Doe suddenly attacked, knocking him to the ground. Mills struggled as the gun was pointed straight at him. Somerset was still far behind, and it seemed impossible for Mills to survive. Then, unexpectedly, John Doe let him live. Mills could not understand why. Anger surged through him. Despite the encounter, Mills hadn't seen John Doe's face clearly. Injured but determined, he regrouped with Somerset and rushed toward John Doe's hotel room. Mills wanted to break down the door, but Somerset stopped him. "We don't have a warrant. Entering now would violate the law, and we could be suspended." Mills' fury, however, was uncontrollable. In a flash, he smashed the door down. Aware that the department could suspend him for this act, Mills acted quickly and cunningly. He paid a nearby woman and asked her to tell the police that she had heard gunshots from the room. She did as instructed, providing a false statement that allowed Mills and Somerset to legally search the room. Breaking the rules but using wit, they finally gained access to John Doe's lair. Inside, everything in the room was meticulously arranged. Notes, newspaper clippings, and countless photographs were scattered with eerie precision. Somerset and Mills methodically searched every corner, cabinets, storage spaces, even the bathroom. In one room, Somerset discovered the same type of sauce cans that had been found in the apartment of the overweight man. Among these were Victor's severed hand and some items connected to the lawyer. It became clear. John Doe was the serial killer they had been hunting. Mills then noticed something chilling, a photograph of himself, the same one the reporter had taken outside Victor's home. It hit him instantly. The reporter had been John Doe in disguise. He quickly summoned backup and ordered a full search. But John Doe was cunning. There wasn't a single fingerprint in the entire room. Recalling the day John Doe, disguised as a reporter, had photographed him, Mills instructed a sketch artist to create John Doe's likeness from memory and circulate it citywide. Just then, the phone in the room rang. It was John Doe. "Well done, both of you. And Mills, I apologize for injuring you. I'm making some adjustments to my plans, and after that, I will claim my next victim," John Doe said before abruptly hanging up. Silence filled the room, the threat lingering like a shadow. Without hesitation, Mills ordered everyone back to work. During the search, Somerset discovered a photo of a woman who appeared to be a prostitute. Nearby was a receipt from a store that made adult toys. Somerset and Mills visited the shop. The owner revealed that John Doe had recently commissioned a custom, deadly sex toy and even showed them a photograph. Somerset and Mills shuddered at what they saw. Soon, Somerset's pager buzzed. They had found the prostitute's body, brutally murdered. On the door of the room, in large letters, was written, "Lust." John Doe had forced a man to use a dangerous belt weapon with a sharp dagger at the front, compelling him to assault the prostitute. The man had acted under duress, and the victim had died in excruciating pain. The man was still in shock. By this point, John Doe had committed 4 murders, each corresponding to one of the sins: gluttony, greed, sloth, and lust. 3 sins remained. Meanwhile, Somerset's final day before retirement arrived, but he resolved not to retire until this case was solved. The next day, another murder was reported, a stunning model. On the scene, the killer had scrawled, "Pride," on the wall. The latest victim was a beautiful model. John Doe had cut her nose and viciously disfigured her face with a knife. Then he gave her a choice: live with her ruined visage or embrace death. The model, who had always worn her beauty like a crown, her pride tied entirely to her looks, chose death over a life with a shattered face. After processing the scene, Somerset and Mills returned to police headquarters, but a voice called out from behind. They turned, and time seemed to freeze. There he stood. John Doe himself, clothes stained with blood. Calmly, without a hint of panic, he surrendered to the police. Immediately, he was taken into custody. Then, with chilling composure, he spoke. "I want my lawyer." Somerset and Mills were stunned. The man they had been hunting had walked right into their hands and was now invoking his legal rights. Nobody could understand his intentions. During interrogation, more shocking truths emerged. John Doe had cut off the skin from his own fingertips. That was why no fingerprints were ever found at any crime scene. There were no records under his name, no credit history, and even his bank account had been opened only 5 years ago, created through paid services. His identity as John Doe was false. What was clear? He was educated, wealthy, and completely deranged. Someone who planned every step of his life with meticulous precision. By this point, John Doe had committed 5 murders. Somerset and Mills were puzzled. If 2 murders remained, why had he surrendered so suddenly? That question was answered when John Doe's lawyer arrived at the station. He announced that John Doe had already killed the remaining 2 victims. But he would reveal the bodies only on one condition. At 6 p.m. that evening, Somerset and Mills had to accompany John Doe to a secret location. Every officer present suspected a trap. The police initially refused the demand outright. But the lawyer warned them. If they did not comply, John Doe would manipulate the system, claim mental illness in court, secure a minimal sentence, and avoid full responsibility. If they agreed, he would provide a written confession taking responsibility for all the murders. After intense deliberation, Somerset and Mills agreed. John Doe was placed in a car, and they set off along the route he dictated, while a police helicopter team silently tracked them from above, monitoring every move. On the way, Somerset asked John Doe for his true identity. But he refused to answer directly. Instead, he said, "I did not do this. I was chosen for it." Somerset, seeing through the deception, leaned in and said firmly, "You did all this because you wanted to control the fate of others, to play God." John Doe smiled, a chilling calmness in his eyes. "Yes," he said, "it's true. Watching them suffer, it gave me peace. But I see nothing wrong with it. If a person sins, how is it a crime to punish them for their sins?" Mills froze, shocked. I thought you were killing innocent people." Anger flared in John Doe's eyes. "Innocent? I freed that fat man by killing him. Every time I saw him, I felt disgust. People mocked him. He was so obese that seeing him made anyone lose their appetite. And the lawyer? He saved dozens of guilty men from punishment. Because of him, criminals roam free. Was he innocent? Victor was a rapist, a drug dealer, someone who ruined children's lives. Every breath he took was poison to this world." John's gaze hardened. "And the model, beautiful on the outside, ugly within. Proud of her looks, I shattered that pride forever. And prostitutes like her spread sickness in society. She was nothing but filth. I cleaned that filth." There was no remorse on John Doe's face now, only a sense of grim satisfaction, as if he had completed some monumental task. Mills scoffed, bitterly. "What you're doing, it won't matter. People will forget in a week." John Doe smiled faintly. "No, my work isn't done. When this mission is complete, the world will remember me as an example. Something will happen. Something no one has ever imagined." The words made Somerset and Mills uneasy. Soon, the trio arrived at the desolate location where John Doe promised to reveal the last two bodies. The place was barren, blistering sun, dry ground, and eerie silence. Suddenly, a van appeared in the distance. Somerset and John were instantly alert. Somerset instructed Mills to watch John closely and moved toward the van. A nervous delivery boy stepped out and admitted he had been paid to bring a box addressed to Detective David Mills. Somerset quickly sent the delivery boy to the police team and approached the blood-stained box with caution. His heart pounded. He knew the truth inside would be unbearable. When he opened it, he nearly lost consciousness. Somerset immediately looked toward Mills and shouted, "Drop the gun, Mills." Weapon down, but the distance between them was too great, and Mills could barely hear. Meanwhile, John Doe spoke with a disturbing calmness. "You know, Mills, I'm a huge fan of yours. And of your wife, Tracy." At the mention of Tracy, Mills stiffened, eyes locked on John Doe. "This morning," John continued, "when you went to the office, I went to your home. I imagined living your life, being Tress's husband, trying to live your life, but I couldn't. So when I left, I took one thing with me." He brought something with him. Mills' breath caught in his throat. What is it?" he asked, trembling. John Doe replied, and Mills could hardly believe what he was hearing. At that moment, Somerset came running. There was a strange fear in his eyes. "Mills, put the gun down," Somerset said urgently. "He's trapping you. This is his game." Mills' mind was blank. He could barely think. In a trembling voice, he asked, "Somerset, what was in the box?" Somerset stayed silent, repeating, "Gun down, don't fall for his trap," but John Doe had already executed his final move. He looked at Mills and said, "I grew envious of your life. Your wife, your home, your happiness. Everything was so perfect that jealousy slowly took root inside me." He continued, "That's why I became the sixth sin. Envy. And now, the last part of my plan remains. I want you to kill me in anger so that the seventh sin, wrath, is complete. Once you do, my mission will be fulfilled." Somerset understood immediately. He turned to Mills, explaining calmly, "He wants you to act in rage, don't do it, Mills." Mills was still shaking, struggling to control himself. But John Doe delivered the final blow. He whispered, "Your wife pleaded with me before she died, for herself, and for the child she carries." Mills froze. He had no idea Tracy was pregnant. Every ounce of restraint shattered. Without thinking, he fired. Once, twice, again and again, until the gun emptied into John Doe's body. John Doe was dead. And with this final act, his plan was complete. The seventh sin had been fulfilled. In the aftermath, police escorted Detective Mills in handcuffs. His face was hollow, eyes filled with pain, rage, and deep regret. The captain looked at Somerset and said, "We'll take care of him." Somerset replied softly, "His life will never be the same. But make sure he has everything he needs." A few moments of silence passed. The captain asked, "So, what will you do now? Retire?" Somerset paused, gazing out toward the distant city. Then he said quietly, "I'm not going anywhere. Someone has to protect this city." And with that, the story ends.